Bicycles have been around for over a century and a quarter. They've powered social movements, aiding in the emancipation of women, and they've given reliable transportation to folks who might otherwise be stuck with Shank's pony. They've raised the profile of France's architecture. Seriously, check out the Tour de France commentary. And their users were among the first to call for widespread paved roads. But back in 2015, research published in the Journal of Transport and Health showed that the proportion of households that owned bikes had declined globally, with the average number of households owning at least one bicycle across the 148 sampled countries falling by nearly half in the period between 1989 and 2015. That fall was in part driven by the massive increase in sales of vehicles across Asia. In China, for example, the shift from nearly every household having a bicycle to fewer than half of households happened in just 15 years. So is the founder of Buzz Bike, Tom Hares, right to say that private bicycle ownership will be dead in a decade? Are bicycles going to become a transportation service, and do they really form part of our transition to a cleaner, greener future? Or has the advent of affordable, reliable electric bicycles reversed the trend away from two wheels? Before we get started, a little reminder to like, subscribe and hit the notification bell. And of course, you can support the channel from under $1 a month through YouTube memberships and Patreon. More on that at the end of the video. While there was, for a period, a precipitous drop in bike ownership, it does seem like the long decline in bicycle sales has come to an end. Over the last few years, cycle ownership has had something of a renaissance, with pandemic-fueled purchasing pushing up bicycle sales dramatically. China alone recorded a greater than 70% increase in export sales of bicycles, with over 16 million bicycles exported. And India reported a 20% year-on-year increase in domestic bicycle sales, with over 14 million new bikes hitting the road in 2021. This has happened despite the fact that increasing automobile use often correlates with decreasing demand for bicycles, in part because the tailpipe pollution from fossil-fueled automobiles makes cycling more unpleasant and worse for your health. That, combined with the increasing risk of injury with more and heavier vehicles, and city planning decisions made to make the life of car owners easier, usually at the expense of everyone else, have historically been responsible for bike owners calling it quits. And probably in part because if you own a car, it can be habit-forming. Why expend the physical effort to cycle when you've got an expensive, effort-reducing car depreciating in your driveway? That said, when I lived and worked in Bristol, I commuted by bike, despite owning both a car and a motorcycle, and that's because it was quicker and more convenient to do so. If you're wondering how riding a 1930s pedal bike could possibly be faster than driving or riding a motorcycle in a major British city, I would suggest that you've probably never experienced a Bristol rush hour. You've never sat on the M32 for 30 minutes just wanting to get onto the M4. You've never crawled up Gloucester Road, either literally or figuratively. And remember, lane splitting is legal in the UK, so I could filter through the jams on a motorbike, but even that was far outpaced by the cycle paths that you can nip through where you can't take a motorbike. And that's one of the things that can make cycling appealing, beyond potentially making you fitter, happier, more productive. Not drinking too much. Oh no, that's a song, although it is mainly supported by evidence as well. Beyond the health benefits for you, cycling can be a way to help solve infrastructure problems that are impossible to solve if everyone's commuting in a car. Imagine 200 people commuting to work. If you put them all in cars individually, which in the US census data suggests that for the last decade around 70% of people have travelled alone for their commute in a car, then each person requires 18 square metres of road space. That's 194 square feet per person. That's 1/5 of my entire house for each person on the road in a car. Okay, so let's throw all of those folks into buses. 200 people is roughly the equivalent of 10 single-decker regular buses. Not at capacity, but around a third full, which is apparently fairly common. To get them to work, each person requires about 2.3 square metres, about 25 square feet. Obviously that number drops if you get more people on the bus. What about cyclists? Well, to get that many cyclists approaching an intersection, you're looking at around 1 square metre or around 11 square feet per person and bike. Pedestrians, incidentally, occupy just under half a square metre or just over 5 square feet. At least they did pre-pandemic. Now I guess they require 28 square feet each. Okay, so it's fairly obvious that you need less space to get the same number of folks into a junction if they're on foot or on bikes than is needed if they're in cars. That ratio of space for cars and bikes is a bit closer in motion, but in addition to the vastly reduced resources required to build a bike or an e-bike versus a car, that also means reduced resource usage to build the road, which can be much narrower, and because bike plus rider weighs vastly less than a car, the road gets less wear and needs less maintenance. Unless, of course, the bike's being ridden by Mr. Stay Puffed. In which case, I think you need to call somebody. But who? The other question you might be wondering is, how long will it take to get all those cyclists through that junction? Well, I've got you covered. It seems that buses and trams take about 30 seconds, public transit for the win. Pedestrians can clear it in just 38 seconds, although obviously even if you're hoofing it on your way to work, your walk is still going to take substantially longer than a bike ride, unless it's a very short route filled with a lot of intersections. Cyclists, in comparison, take about 2 minutes to clear the junction, and the super fast Freedom Mobile with awesome acceleration, more than 4 minutes. All of which factors into the actuality that building cycling infrastructure provides an enormously effective way to invest in moving people around. In infrastructure terms, separating bicycles from pedestrians and motorised traffic, building cycle paths and bridges and so on are incredibly cheap and efficient compared to expanding existing roads for cars and lorries, and the gains from doing so feed back into other systems. In an analysis of 23 studies, the 5 studied cities found that cyclists spent more in commercial areas than visitors arriving using cars or transit. And a review of 16 other North American cities said the same, although some studies did suggest that that spending came at the expense of big box store spending. So that's a win-win. And then results from Europe suggest that cycling investment during the pandemic has already increased cycling rates by more than 40% in the most successful cities. Unfortunately, that same research suggests that pop-up cycle lanes installed early in the pandemic have now been dismantled. This despite the suggestion that boosting cycling may have provided up to $7 billion in health benefits alone. As we reported recently, sales of electric bicycles in the US are now outpacing battery electric and plug-in hybrids. 790,000 electric bicycles were imported to the US in 2021, 70% more than were imported in 2020. So we're getting there on sales, but getting people to ride for their commute is the challenge. So while bikes as a service definitely have their place in metropolitan areas, it doesn't look like ownership is going away anytime soon. In the US, where just 0.5% of people cycle to work, and research by the Pew Research Center suggests that unlike Europe and Asia, cycling is mainly a hobby for wealthier people, with 71% of wealthy homes having at least one functioning bicycle versus 38% of lower income households, there's a lot of work to do to get bums on seats and feet on pedals on work days. And with e-bikes making the transition to pedal power easier on those who, like me, are not the fittest, and the cost for a good e-bike falling to around $1,000, there are good arguments to be made for incentivizing bicycle ownership. Many states and counties alongside businesses are offering financial incentive schemes to encourage cycling. From rebates on sales tax to low interest loans or pre-tax deductions, folks looking for a deal on transitioning to electric bicycles can often find support through their workplace or local government. And financing a $1,000 purchase with low maintenance costs is markedly easier than finding a loan for a $40,000 electric car. You'll rarely find me quoting Elon Musk, but just as he said it will take more than Tesla alone to transition the automotive market to EVs, so it is that avoiding catastrophic anthropogenic climate change takes more than just electric cars. Making multimodal transportation, that is walking, cycling, public transport, etc., a real part of our transportation planning in addition to reducing the number of journeys required alongside electrification of both transportation and homes, all of it factors in. While we're doing that, it's vital that we take account of the very real fact that not everyone is physically able to ride a bike, or has a job where a bicycle will work as the primary means of transportation. Making a better future must not come at the expense of making the world less accessible to those already underserved. But building livable cities that encourage people to consider options other than just jumping in the car, it's vital if we're going to get a better planet to live on. That's it for today. Thank you for watching, and we'll be back with more soon. Would you like us to cover more e-bike stories and reviews? Are you interested in a weekly e-bike roundup? If you are, drop a note in the comments below or in our free to join Discord chat room. There's a link below. If you liked the video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, make sure you've subscribed to this channel and our other channel, Transport Evolved Take 2, and give the bell a gentle ding to make sure you're told when our next video goes live. Thanks on behalf of the entire TE crew go out to the folks on my right for being a $15 to $49 a month supporter. Special thanks to our $50 a month patrons Chris Maxwell, Brian Newton, David Kitchen, Michael Goad, Ricky Leong, Andrew Martin, Guido Drahota, Brophy Wolf, Tesla in the Gong, Gordon C, Stephen O'Donoghue, Kyle Hodgson, Anthony Coates, Regine Fellows, Rory Litwin, Anonymous Freak, Jim Burness and Denny Hyde. And our deepest gratitude to our $100 a month Patreon supporters, Marcel Ward, Reggie Watts, Joe Bresney, JP Fagerback, Will Graylan, Matthew Drobnak, John Lyons, Christopher Lee Jones, Laura Reynolds, Paul Conway, Ellery Hensley, and Ian. Feeling left out? You can join Patreon at the link below. Hit the join button below to support us on YouTube, or show us your support through Bitcoin, Ko-fi, or our cool swag store. Links are all below. Thanks for joining me, and as always, keep evolving.